So for my documentary, I looked at the history of feminism and all the different ways because I was influenced by the seminar class that I'm taking by Gloria Anazuda and how it talks about how she felt her and women of color felt like they couldn't relate to using the term feminism because they felt it didn't cover all women. And so I decided I wanted to research the history of feminism. And some of the things that I found was starting from the very first wave when they were, fighting for the right to vote and fighting for the right to own property, there were some women who also still felt like they couldn't use that term because they were worried about being able to keep a job or being able to keep working, especially after the wars. And they would during the war they were allowed to work because the men were out fighting, but then when the men came back they were told just to go back. But many women had to still keep working because either their husbands were injured or their husbands are died, they still had to take care of their family. And even into the second wave of feminism, it was more about women of color. But then as the third wave came on, it started being more about all perspectives. And so I decided that I wanted to interview different women of different ages. I interviewed my mother, and I also did a survey online, and I got a collection of people. I didn't get a collection of videos because of the virus, but I interviewed them and I made things to show their words. I got influenced by that because there was something about the fourth wave of feminism where it said the Women's March was first started by grandmother on Facebook. And it made me think about how each different generation has been influenced in different ways when it comes to what feminists are or what feminism is. Like maybe they feel like they don't relate to it, maybe they feel like they do, and how it got me thinking about like the women in my life, like my great grandmothers that I'm named after, and I never got to meet them. I wondered, what would they think about feminism? Like, was it something that they thought about, or, were they worried about other things in life, like taking care of their family, so they didn't really, think about what was going on? And I thought, if I interviewed my grandmother, who's still alive today, but right now she's in a nursing home, we can't see her, like, what would she think about it too? Because for me, she's an influence of a strong woman because of what she had to do in order to survive. But I wonder how she would view herself in relation to this term. And so that's why I decided to interview different women and also collect a survey. I tried to collect videos, but I didn't get any, but I did get written ones. So I made infographics that I'm also going to share in this video. There. Okay. Hi, Mom. Mom, can you tell me what is your name and your age?
My name is Maria Guadalupe Tamayo, 68.
Okay, and I want to know, since I've been looking at the history of feminism, I've been asking women, how old were they the first time that they heard about feminism?
Well, not at a young age, maybe in the 70s.
Okay, the 70s.
Yeah.
So that was probably, how old were you then?
I graduated in 72, and I graduated as an older person because I came from Mexico, so I was late at beginning school. So in 72, I graduated and went into nursing school.
Okay, and when you first started hearing about feminism, what did you first think?
Well, it's hard to think about it now, but in the Hispanic population and in the poor families, the man of the house is the boss. The man of the house is the provider. And my mother was the oldest with 3 other siblings that were boys. And she had a rough time, so she pushed on making it, get an education. Don't work as hard as she worked. And so we knew the right from wrong. They taught us that was very important. They taught us to be on time and be polite, but a lot of times they would not explain that you had rights or that you had the right to speak up for yourself. It was mostly, you need to work, you need to provide. So a lot of families before me, I would think, would put up with stuff that was going on at the time. I went to nursing school, so the hospitals weren't as bad as people that didn't get educated. Then they didn't have the same rights, or they didn't have the same respect or treatment.
Okay, one of the things I found while I was studying the history of feminism, that at the very beginning and like the first waves and second waves, that a lot of women of color and also lower class women felt like they couldn't relate to the term feminist. Mm-hmm. And that was something I also felt growing up. And so I wanted to ask you, did you ever feel like you didn't fit what a feminist was or relate to the term?
Well, like I said, if you had a husband, then a lot of the times you were just expected to be a housewife and a mother, and you weren't a provider. I had already worked before I got married, so for me it was just a thing that I had to push. I had to push myself to finish my education.
Okay, I was gonna ask you to finish. We were talking about how, did you ever feel like as a woman that you never fit the term feminism or what feminism was? And I know you brought up about like how in the Mexican culture, the way.
Well, I'm sure in America, people that had gone through, the voting rights or all that. I came to America in 1960. I was 7 years old. So I didn't go through the history of, fighting for your rights and the voting rights and the women's rights. But, I knew in the 70s about the hippies and about people fighting for their individual rights of being able to do what you want. But as a wife and a mother, I was brought up to think more of do what you need to do, work, be responsible, keep a job, and that was the extent of, we would, other than working, we would travel with family, with a grandfather, a mother, an uncle, or the husband, and we weren't, really like going out, doing our thing. So I'm not too good at explaining the other way around, the freedoms.
when I made my survey for this, for people I handed out, it talked about the fourth wave of feminism and the Me Too movement. I brought up an example one time, me and you were talking about it, and how you brought up the fact that you felt sad for women who may have passed away before they got to share their story. So do you believe, like, what did you first think when you started hearing about Me Too on the media?
Well, that's again, the heritage or the, being a Hispanic or being, you know, most women were told not to tell or not to, it's like abortion or like getting pregnant at a young age. A lot of the ladies that got pregnant, and you hear it now in stories, gave their children away because their parents would turn them against the idea of keeping a child. And with Hispanics, I don't know if it's more the love for your children or the love for family. I would not ask a child of mine to do that. So, there's just big differences in upbringing. And so, yes, it is sad that somebody didn't tell their story, but what would have happened? Would they have been believed? And what it would start at home. The father or the mother would turn you down or give the baby away. It's the same thing further on in history. It's most of the gay population would not say that they wouldn't come out for the same reason. The father would disown them or say, "You're not my son," and that is hard to deal with. And as a nurse, I met some young men that at the end of life, they wanted to come home and not tell their parents, but die close to family. And it's sad that even though we're loving and we give a big effort to have our children, that we wouldn't accept them for what they are and who they are and what they chose to be. So that's my opinion. A lot of times, or a couple of times, I dared to tell them, a mother's love is always there. Why don't you confide on your mother and just tell her I came home?
And one thing that I've always wondered, because growing up when I was in high school and young girls or even in college, and people would ask me if I was a feminist, but I felt like I couldn't relate to it, I would say I came from strong women because Grandma Avida and Grandma Lydia. And so I've actually always wondered if, like right now I can't interview Grandma Avida because she's at the daycare, but I've always wondered if she would have considered herself a feminist, or was she just doing what she thought she had to do to survive?
It's what you have to do to survive. Divorced, 2 children, you worked with what you had. No education. So any type of jobs, restaurant, taking care of children, so you do what you need to do. And that's one of the main things. But if we have respect, I'm just not an outgoing person. I have few friends, but I am not where families are known that the wife goes with the girls and the husband goes with the boys, but I never grew up that way. So it's still that way.
And one thing I feel is with the Me Too movement, now that more women are talking about it, I actually found something interesting that right after President Trump was elected and they had the Women's March in Washington, I thought it was started by someone young. And it was actually, the research shows it was started by a grandma on Facebook. She started talking about it on Facebook. She got all her friends together and they started the Women's March. The Me Too movement was first started by Black ladies trying to help survivors of sexual assault, and then with Weinstein, it came out more. But I feel like social media opens up an avenue now for us to be able to talk about things. Do you think that too?
Yes, but we've all changed to a point where, like, I wouldn't ask my girls, okay, you got pregnant, you're gonna have this baby, we're gonna raise it, we're gonna love it. And that is within your family values or yourself wanting to be different. I was never talked to about the birds and the bees. So when my girls or my children came, and being a nurse and knowing medical information, I made my children strong, I believe, in knowing what health, what was right from wrong when it comes to sexual, either pregnancy or taking care of yourself and others. So I feel that as every generation goes, then you're different. But as a nurse, I work with younger generations, and it's like nothing is secret anymore, or nothing is sacred anymore. And people tell stories about where they went out, who they had sex with. And I think that is not wrong, it's your choice to talk, but it doesn't give you respect. And you're not actually a mature or responsible person, because those are things that are not shared. Unless now, if you feel you were used or raped or your rights were violated, then of course you need to tell somebody you care about. And you start with family, and then you go to the law.
Okay, thank you, Mama. Okay, so to collect information for my video, I was actually going to try to set up Zoom to interview a bunch of different people, but then I created a survey. One was to collect videos, another was to collect written words. I didn't collect any videos, but I was able to collect written words, and I actually made infographics I got about 3 people who answered the surveys, and they're 3 different people that I know, but also 3 different, they were all different ages, which is something that I wanted to focus on, to look at the influence that feminism has had on different people. So I made infographics. The first person that I got a survey from was my sister, and she's 45. Her name is Loopy. And I related the questions, like the first question I asked them was, how old were you when you heard about feminism the first time, and what did you think? She says she was 13, and that when she heard about it, she thought it was a good thing because it focused on women's rights, and she felt like it would promote that. Then I asked about, because one of the things, since learning through the history, that not everyone has felt they could relate to being a feminism or feminist or feminism, I asked her if there was any point in time she's ever felt like that. For her, it was as an adult, because she felt like a lot of the feminist movement looks down on you if you're considered a conservative Christian, because they either think you're being controlled or that you're against women's rights. And one thing I asked was, what do you feel when it comes to the feminist movement nowadays? Do you feel like it covers all perspectives, or do you feel like it still leaves people out? She felt like that no, it does not cover all perspectives, that there's still like an agenda there of only what they're interested, and that they don't really want to help all women, that they only want to promote their agenda. The next person was one of my friends from college, and she's age 32. She said she couldn't remember how old she was the first time she heard about it, but that she felt apathetic to it. That she felt like as she grew, that, she started to pay attention and to understand it, and she felt like it fit her perfectly, and that it stood for equality, and that that's what feminism is about. So then I asked, does feminism currently look at all perspectives or all issues? And she felt like it does look at all perspectives, but all issues, but that since she's middle class, that there's probably issues that she cannot relate to or that she hasn't thought about because they do not apply to her. And then we brought up the fourth wave of feminism and the social media and people talking about like the rape culture and how it's done on social media, the way people talk, and how does she feel about that? She said she felt like that we have to understand that sexist ideals continue and that they can be made worse by social media and forums. So you have to fight the ideas because they're like a virus and they're hard to get rid of. But there's also always been females who are against feminists and who side with men. This is nothing new. Because I brought up in my question about how one person who wrote an article talking about how she had been sent a Twitter message, that she says that when she writes articles, there's men who send her messages, private messages on Twitter saying that they want to rape her and kill her. And one time when she went to block that man, she noticed that he was married, he had kids, and he had a family, and she wondered, would he say this if it was face to face? Would he say this in front of his mom or in front of his wife or in front of his kids? Or is he only saying this because it's private? And so she blocked him, but she also shared what he wrote. And there was a lot of people were supporting her, but there was a lot of people who were against her. And what surprised me was how she said there was women who sent her messages saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you're going to get him in trouble. And she brings up the fact that, how am I the one getting him in trouble when he's the one who chose to do that? When he's the one who chose to send those messages of not only that he wants to rape me, but he also wants to kill me, but yet somehow by me sharing it, I'm the one getting him in trouble. So I asked him about the Me Too thing, and she felt that not everyone can come forward and that people can use Me Too against a victim and say that they were slandering the person they were talking about. And there's a European version where you got to say the name and it was stronger. She did say that the Me Too movement made her feel less alone, but it reassured me that not much has changed. It was devastating to see how many women it took to take down Harvey Weinstein. There was a woman who made a claim against a basketball player. There was a video and he was let off the hook. So she says, we may be speaking up, but the things have a long way to go. And then I shared that quote from the book that I felt is kind of inclusive in the way that it describes what feminism is. And she felt that she liked the quote because it was inclusive, how it talks, especially because it talks about the social hierarchies, and that it's important that although women want to be equal to men, there are already men to which they are above. For example, right-rich women might be higher status than a poor Black man. It says equality is not about men and women, it needs to be universal. The last person I collected was another college friend, and it was Natalie, age 33. She said she was around 14 when she first heard about feminism. She really didn't think much about it, and that she didn't understand what the term meant. She did think it meant empowered women, but she didn't understand how or why, and that the world has definitely changed for her as she got older. For whether she felt like she related to fitting with that term or that word, she said she never felt like she fit into the term feminist, and she says, I still don't feel like I fit into the term. She says, growing up in a predominantly Hispanic city and with a Hispanic family, the term was hardly used. I had a mother who worked to help provide for our family, and a grandmother who was a single mom who also worked to provide for her family. So she always felt like women were strong and capable of doing whatever they needed to do to be able to provide for their family. She did put, I asked her, the question was, does feminism currently now look at all perspectives? She put, I do think that feminism looks at all perspectives regardless of race or ethnicity or economic background. But she also felt like just because it takes into account all perspective, it may not be 100% equal in all of those perspectives. And then I brought up the fourth wave and the video that I made, and she talked about how if she understood the video correctly, she would say she's glad that social media exists to spread awareness of the injustice towards women and how they take place around the world. She said because it's a good platform to have to be able to share their experiences with pay inequality and the workforce of their own country. For the Me Too, she brought up she never heard about Me Too in 2006. Then she started hearing about it when the actress started coming forward about being sexually harassed. She felt like the movement was a great way for others to come forward and show that people are not alone. She said the Me Too movement should be inclusive to not only sexual assault, but it should also include mental health, physical health, and other things. And that it's important for us to help each other out as much as possible and to bring awareness because these are many things that can affect our society. And then she said about the quote, she said she didn't think the definition of feminism should include men's rights. Feminism does tie to other social movements, however, but feminism, it's its own social movement for its own reason. That feminism should be kept going as a continuous fight for the equal rights for women of all social backgrounds, privileged or underprivileged women, and that she did feel like it's unfortunate that we moved away from some of the traditional roles that each gender plays. That while I do believe that women should have the right to decide what they do with the body, with their bodies, I also believe that a man, especially if the man is a husband, should have a say in the decision too when it comes to women's having babies. She also put she doesn't think women should be forced, but I do think husbands' opinions matters because after a marriage is meant to take two people into one. I think if feminism is going to fight for a woman's right to work and be equally paid as men, feminism should equally show its support for women who choose the more traditional roles of being a stay-at-home spouse. It should be okay for me to stay home to help raise my family without having a feminist tell me I'm being oppressed for not working and fulfilling my dreams.